There's a reason most woodworking projects fall apart halfway through. And it's not your skill level. It's the plan. At first, everything looks fine. Clean diagrams, nice photos, maybe even a materials list. You feel confident. You start cutting, assembling, making progress. Then something subtle happens. A measurement doesn't quite match. A step feels like it skipped something. You reread the instructions, try to fill in the gap yourself, adjust slightly, and keep going. Because that's what most people do. They assume the problem is them. So they compensate. They double-check cuts, redo parts, make best guesses. And for a while, it works, or at least it feels like it might. But the deeper you go, the more those small uncertainties stack up. A joint doesn't sit flush. Alignment feels off. You start forcing pieces together instead of fitting them. And suddenly a project that felt straightforward becomes something you're fighting against. Not because you lack ability, but because the structure guiding you isn't solid. Most people think a woodworking plan is just a set of instructions, a list of cuts, a few diagrams, maybe some steps. But that's only the surface. It's like trying to assemble a machine using only a photo of the finished product. You can see what it should look like, but not how each part interacts along the way. And that's where things break down. Because what actually makes a woodworking plan work isn't what's visible at first glance. It's what's been resolved before you ever touch a piece of wood. On the surface, bad plans and good plans look surprisingly similar. They both have diagrams. They both have measurements. They both promise a finished result. But one forces you to interpret. The other removes the need to. And that difference is everything. Think about where most projects go wrong. It's rarely the first step, or even the second. It's somewhere in the middle, where the instructions assume something hasn't been explained, where a cut depends on a previous step being perfectly understood, where the order of assembly actually matters, but isn't clearly defined. That's the invisible layer most people never think about. A working plan isn't just about telling you what to do. It's about eliminating every point where you might hesitate. Every moment where you stop and think, wait, how exactly does this connect? Because that hesitation is where mistakes begin. And once you're guessing, you're no longer following a plan. You're improvising. The real issue isn't that woodworking is difficult. It's that most plans are incomplete systems. They show the outcome, but not the path with enough precision to reproduce it. And that creates a hidden burden on the builder. You're expected to bridge the gaps, to interpret intent, to fix inconsistencies, which means every project becomes part building and part problem solving. That's why results feel inconsistent. Not because the work is unpredictable, but because the instructions are. Once you see that, something shifts. You stop blaming the process and start looking at the structure behind it. Because a plan that actually works behaves differently from the start. It doesn't just guide you, it anticipates you. It accounts for the moments where people typically get stuck. It defines not just what to do, but when and in what order. It removes ambiguity from measurements, not close enough, but exact enough that parts fit without force. It connects each step logically to the next, so you're never jumping ahead mentally trying to figure out what's coming. In other words, it closes the gap between intention and execution. And when that gap disappears, something interesting happens. The process feels smoother, not easier in terms of effort. You're still cutting, assembling, adjusting, but clearer. You're no longer second-guessing every move. You're following a path that's already been walked and refined. And that changes how you approach the work. Instead of slowing down to avoid mistakes, you move forward with more confidence. Instead of correcting errors, you prevent them. Instead of stopping midway, you keep going. Because the plan isn't just telling you what to build. It's carrying part of the cognitive load for you. That's what most people are actually missing. Not tools, not talent. Structure. A plan that has already been tested, not just designed. Where the unclear steps have already been clarified. Where the small errors that ruin alignment have already been caught. Where the sequence has already been proven to lead to a finished result. Without that, every project becomes a trial. With it, the process becomes repeatable. And once something is repeatable, it becomes reliable. That's when woodworking starts to feel different. Less like a gamble, and more like a system you can trust. If you want to go deeper into how these plans are structured, and what to look for before you start your next project, there's a structured breakdown in the description that walks through it step by step. And if this kind of clarity is useful to you, you can subscribe for more videos that break down how these systems actually work. Because once you understand the structure behind the process, the results tend to follow.